on, guys? So in this week's episode of Doctor Who, we finally got to find out what's in the box, and it's not Juice, it was freaking Missy, like we assumed. I told you the best just like idea was like it's gonna be Missy or it's gonna be the Master. It's gonna be somebody that the Doctor knew in that box, and we have found out that it was Missy. Now I'm very interested to see why Missy was in that box. Is it just for past things that the Master has done, you know, because we've seen him do a lot of things over the whole Doctor Who franchise, or is it for something we haven't seen yet that is going to be revealed later on in this season? But we know that the promise or the oath that the Doctor took wasn't to like stop traveling around the world with companions, because that's not something that anybody would ever make the Doctor do. It was an oath to watch over the box and to watch over the body of Misty. I'm thinking about Pokemon right now, but Missy, so he took this oath to watch over Missy, and, you know, she's alive, so she could probably get out at any time. She's just as clever as the Doctor, so she could probably get out of the box whenever she wants, but the Doctor's actually just keeping his oath and watching over that box for 1,000 years. Now, when this episode started and we were on that planet that knows how to kill a bunch of, like, everything, basically, we know that it said a long time ago. So we don't know how long the Doctor has been watching over this box. Now we can assume that, you know, it's not too far along in the timeline from Earth, but we don't know exactly when that whole execution actually took place, because, you know, the Doctor could have went back in time and they could have caught Missy back in time. So we don't really know how long he's been guarding the box. We do know from the very first episode that, you know, Bill was saying that, you know, the Doctor has been at that university for a really long time and nobody really knows what he does. So you can assume that the Doctor has been guarding that box for a really long time. And even everybody that talks to him thinks he's retired or something like that. Missy was like, oh, I thought you retired on Beryllium and blah, 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 blah. That's when we know River finally died. I mean, we already know how River died from the Tenet episodes, but still. So she's gone, and we got a little sneak peek of River, not River herself, but her book, which knows everything about the Doctor ever, and we saw that's how Nordal came on and started being the Doctor's companion, because he's officially the only person that has the permission to kick the Doctor's ass. So that mystery has finally been solved. Now we do have the new question of why Missy got executed, but one thing that caught my interest, well, actually two things caught my interest, just because one was really badass and the other one just made me think. But when that whole guy that was, you know, I don't know what you would call him, the host of the execution, was telling the Doctor, like, oh yeah, you know, every body has to be guarded for at least 1,000 years in case of relapse of life. That made me interested, made me curious. Is that how the Master became Missy? Because we remember that in the Tenet era, when the Master was there, because Matt Smith didn't go up against the Master, I don't think, because Missy only came up with Capaldi. So we never saw the Master during Matt Smith's era. Sorry, I just brain farted. But when the Master died in Tenet, he died in Tenet's arms, and he was like, regenerate, regenerate, I'm the only one, blah, blah. We remember that whole season, and everybody was like, that's why everybody was so shocked that Missy was actually the Master, because they were like, how? He didn't freaking regenerate. So, does this mean that the Doctor, or Time Lords, or maybe just the Master, could he die and regenerate later? Is it possible that you can actually regenerate later and you don't have to regenerate immediately? Did the Time Lord lore or the way we think regeneration happens just changed? Or do you think that this is only something the Master can do? I just found that interesting because a lot of people always question that, like, how the hell did the Master become Missy? Well, maybe it's possible that, you know, a Time Lord's body can regenerate later and it doesn't have to do it immediately. So, I don't know. I just thought that was interesting. The second thing was at the end of the episode when they save Missy, our Doctor, you know, of course, doesn't kill her because the Doctor doesn't kill his friends. And she's all like, oh, I'm sleeping, like, blah, blah. Like, she's all tired. And he's all like, what? You're not going to leave this planet? And he's all like, look under cause of death for Doctor. And, or look under cause of death that has, like, Doctor linked to it. And, you know, his freaking things all going all crazy. He's like, well, and everybody gets scared and runs away because the Doctor has killed a shitload of people. And, yeah, I don't know. It's like, that's the one thing. Like, the Doctor has this rule of not, like, killing people really, kind of, but he has killed a shitload of people. And I think that's kind of why I'm really interested in his character, because he does it when it's like necessary, which that's a really big thing, because when is it ever necessary, you know what I mean? Because it's like, you know, you get into that whole thing like, well, life for a life, like, you know, you don't have that kind of power, blah, 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 but the doctor does it to save a bunch of lives. He makes the hard decisions, which is really crazy. And, you know, it's interesting to see a different dynamic, because one of my favorite characters of all time is Batman, who has a no-kill rule, although if you look at all his history, he's killed before. But anyways, my biggest thing is, it's always interesting to see a character that has these rules or morals, but sometimes he's gotta cross them out to make other shit happen. But let's go ahead and move on to the rest of the episode, and we got introduced to a new Doctor Who type of alien villain thing, which is the Extremis, I guess is what they're being called. Or it's not, I don't think they're called the Veritas, because the Veritas is the thing they read, but it looks like they're calling them the Extremis or whatever, and those are the zombie-like characters that were going out throughout this episode and killing everybody. Now, I do want to point out for those of you who might have got confused by this episode, because it was kind of going in 3 different parts. It was going from the past, when the Doctor made his oath, to a virtual simulation, to the Doctor in real time. I think some people might have got confused by this, but if you remember, the Doctor Who gets a message at the start of the episode, and it says Extremis or whatever, and that is when the Pope and everybody shows up. He's basically watching a recording of when the whole mission starts, because if you remember at the end when he's in the Oval Office, and he's talking to the, I'm going to just say the Extremists, because I don't know what they're exactly called, because they didn't really introduce themselves. But I'm going to assume that they actually, I mean, when he was talking that whole time, he said that there was a recording on his glasses and he could email that, and he emails that to himself through the virtual reality or computer simulation that they're in, and that is what he watches. So when you're watching this episode, the Doctor is doing a flashback to the whole Missy stuff, but when you're seeing him and Bill and Nordal in the whole library and everything, that is an actual, the simulation that they were in, and he was basically watching that whole thing, if you didn't get it, because at the end of the episode, it says recording finished or recording ended, and that just means that he finished watching the whole recording on his, you know, sonic sunglasses. Granted, he doesn't have eyesight, but I guess he's able to just, like, sense it all through the sonic, you know, just kind of how he, you know, freaking does everything the way we saw how it works in the episode. But, so he got all that information from the actual sonic sunglasses, and he hasn't went through that yet. So, did we just get introduced to the big bads of this season? Is the Extremists going to be the big bads of this season? Because remember, there's always like one big bad for every Doctor Who season, and have we just got that? Because the Doctor was saying he thinks that there's something big coming. That's why he tells Bill to ask out that girl Penny and all of that jazz. And if you paid attention in the episode, the Doctor says that there is like this being or this alien that wants to conquer the world, but to do that, he wanted to create a shadow world where he could do like simulations and try to just like go ahead and conquer the world that way. So when he knows he could beat the simulations, he'd be ready to take over the real world. So who is this one big alien or this one person that wants to take over the world? What if it was the Master? Wouldn't that be crazy? Because if I'm not mistaken, I believe the Master, I'm forgetting his name right now, but the one from the Tennant era, I believe is supposed to make an appearance in this season. So, and I don't know if Missy is actually going to meet her old self, kind of like how Matt Smith and Tennant met themselves. So we might get a Master meeting Missy kind of thing going on, which is the same Time Lord. But it'd be really awesome if the person that was trying to take over the world, which is the one planet the Doctor is always constantly saving or has like a special place in his heart to like save them all the time, he is their protector. It would be so interesting if the person trying to take over the world that created this shadow realm is actually the Master. That be freaking Missy's big plan. Is that the reason why Missy's in the box? Which would be really weird because, well, you would think the Doctor would know that unless there's just some craziness that the Doctor didn't catch, or there's a, you know, I don't know. It's gonna be really interesting, but I just thought it would be cool if the person trying to take over the world was the Master. But if it's not the Master, we know that there is this new big bad. There are these new creatures or aliens that are in Doctor Who, and apparently they're really smart to the point where they're able to create basically the freaking Matrix. And that's what I absolutely loved about this episode was, you know, we got these new characters that have created this shadow world, And it was just so, like, interesting that it blew my mind. And a lot of people were saying that this episode was mind-bending. I don't know why I've been doing this all day. But I really enjoyed this episode because it makes you think about a whole lot of things. One, it had religious aspects in it, which I've told you guys a million times. I love religious aspects in things. It had to do with the secret library, which secret libraries are always the best, right? So apparently the Vatican in this episode has like a secret library with all these secret, sacred, scared text kind of things. And that's where the Veritas was. And it was actually locked in a cage, so it's probably their biggest thing that they have. But yeah, so we have this secret library, and then we have like all these metaphors for religion, basically, because the simulations were like through portals of light, and we saw people walking towards the light the moment we saw those things. That's like, you know, kind of symbolism for heaven, like, oh, walk towards the light, things will get better, that's paradise, blah, blah, blah. Also kind of how like a lot of people go towards religion to find answers and stuff like that. You know, it's just, so there was like a lot of these like religious undertones in this episode. The doctor brought up an interesting conversation or an interesting tidbit that always kind of seems to be brought up when it comes between science and religion, because a lot of people feel like science and religion can't coexist, which is a really weird, you know, just concept for me. I was like, why can't you just like, you know, whatever. But one, you know, each side has their beliefs and they stick to their beliefs. But the doctor mentions, he was all like, if, you know, a whole bunch of scientists got an email from like a religious place, what would scare them both? What would require scientists to pray? Because, you know, a lot of people feel like scientists are not religious because they just believe in purely science. Well, in this episode, it seems like they are both afraid, and we know that from CERN, which is the place that had all the explosives, they found out that they were in a computer simulation after they read the Veritas. So that explains what would scare people that are religious and scientific, is finding out you're basically in the freaking Matrix and you're not really alive. Just situations that really make you think, because you have on one hand scientists, one hand you have religion, but what if either of those didn't matter because we were all in a computer simulation? And there's a lot of people that feel that way. There's a lot of people that actually believe that everything is just a computer simulation, or that there's proof that there's a computer simulation, and when things change in the world that don't make sense, that's a computer glitch. I don't know. You can read theories about it online. You know, I've read some of this kind of shit just because I'm interested in it. I'm like, wow, it's pretty crazy what people think. And I've seen the freaking Matrix. Like, the Matrix could be something. Like, what if we're all just batteries, man? But, you know, we can get into that discussion some other time. But I just thought it was hilarious and awesome at the same time that, you know, they took that concept of maybe what we see right now, like we believe everything is real, but what if it really isn't? On top of that, they brought in the freaking shadow game. If you guys ever played that when you were little, where you just started copying somebody, and it's the shadow game, and you're just constantly repeating over and over. Well, they came up with that, and they made that concept, that idea of that little game, they made it into a whole episode called, you know, the shadow test, which is when, that's why that guy's hitting on the desk and everybody's saying the same number and it's just repeating over and over and over. That's how you find out you're in the freaking Matrix. And that is why everybody in this episode was killing themselves, because they found out they weren't real, and they felt like if you kill yourself, that is the escape. Now, is that for sure? Is that 100% real? We don't know. I mean, those computer simulations felt like it was going to be, and maybe they would wake up where they were before, but we really don't know that. Then again, the doctor, he didn't kill himself, but Bill's still alive, and she found out that she wasn't real, and we saw her disintegrate into the simulation, but she was real after the doctor got it. So maybe everybody was alive that killed themselves in the whole thing. Like I said, this episode just had it just made you think of so many things. It made you think, like, they brought up video games a lot in this game. Like Nordal, before he disappeared, he said like, oh yeah, everything that's being projected is just simulations, like it's not real, because it's like very posh VR, as he said, without the headset, which I thought was a fucking great, what is it, analogy? Is that the right word? But whatever, a great way to explain everything. They just brought up video games a lot. They were talking about Super Mario and all that kind of stuff, and he was talking about how the people in the video games we play that we're constantly killing and getting headshots and 360 no-scopes on, he was all, those people believe they're real. Like, they don't know that they're in a computer simulation and we're constantly just killing them. They think that they're constantly just dying and whatnot, which is just something really weird to think about. So all those games that you play all the time, every night, every weekend, you know, just think about if those people in those games actually think that they're real people the way we do, which is just something to really blow your mind because you're constantly killing them every day. The last thing I want to talk about is that whole thing the doctor and everybody kept repeating, which was like with no hope, no reward, everything, like they kept repeating that, and that seemed like the way the doctor was able to get out of the simulation, kind of, because he was talking about how he says he doesn't know what he believes in anymore, but the one belief he does have is, you know, the belief in him, that when there's something crazy happening, you call the doctor, and like the world has always believed in the doctor, and that is crazy because we know that the doctor is this savior, and there's a lot of people that think that that the doctor is a god because of the things he's able to do, and the doctor himself believes in the doctor because he literally sends him something to like save him, to save everybody in the simulation. He literally says that in the message, like, P.S. save them from Dr. X. So it kind of makes you think, when you take this whole religious aspect of this episode, it just kind of reinforces that idea that the doctor is somewhat of a god in here, and it all goes off of belief. Like, people believe in the doctor much like people believe in religion, and a lot of people think, like, you know, a lot of people count the doctor out. A lot of people don't, you know, like even the Extremis, if we're going with them, he's like, we can beat you, there's no way you can win. Just like belief, a lot of people are like, well, I don't care what you say, like, you know, my God is my God, blah, 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 you know, whatever. We're not going to get into that. But the way people believe so strongly in religion is how some people in this show believe in the doctor, and we saw the doctor win. I'm not here saying that religion wins everything. I'm not saying that at all. What I'm saying is some people's belief is so strong that it leads them to do amazing things in this world, and that's something I have no problem with. If your belief can actually get you to somewhere you want to be and just make you do great, amazing things, then fuck yeah for you, man. Like, that is badass. I mean, a lot of people have their own beliefs in, like, I want to change the world, I want to do that. You believe in something. It doesn't have to be religion. It doesn't have to be anything like spiritual, but it can be some kind of belief. Like, you want to change the world, you want to leave your mark on it, you want to do just something positive, or whatever your belief is in this world. It just, like, it felt like this episode kind of just reinforced that, like, and it's low-key, like, you gotta really look into it. I mean, if you're just looking at the surface, you're like, oh, this was just a cool episode with zombie priests and shit like that, man. But if you really think about it, I feel like this episode just kind of just showed you that if you believe hard enough and you just keep, you know, against all odds, no matter how crazy it is, because people in this episode literally killed themselves because they found out the truth and they just accepted it. But if you don't accept things and you keep pushing forward, then maybe you can just achieve those goals that you've been believing in this whole time. Or everything I just said is a complete bullshit because we're in a simulation. But I do want to know, what did you guys think of this episode? Did this episode confuse you? Were you just like, oh, what the fuck's going on? Did you think this was a really awesome episode? What do you think is going on now that we found out what was in the box, who's in the box? What do you think Missy did? So many questions come from this episode, and we know that the Extremists are going to be on the next episode, and something crazy is happening there because apparently things are just showing up, like a pyramid came out of nowhere, and like planes and stuff like that. Shut up, phone! But anyways, guys, let me know what you thought of this episode in the comment sections down below. Don't forget to go check out our awesome perks over on Patreon if you want to support the channel. And I'll be announcing the giveaway winner soon on my 20K Q&A video, so make sure you come back and look for that. I don't know when I'm going to release that. It'll probably be closer to the weekend because we got Gotham and Flash coming out, so those videos will be the next videos on the channel. But anyways, as always, I am your host, JUICEbox. I didn't say, if you like this video, give it a thumbs up and share it with all your Doctor Who buddies. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button for all things nerdy and geeky on this channel. As always, I'm your host, JUICEbox. Remember, when you wake up in the morning, ask yourself something. If I have my daily dose of juice, see you guys next time. Beep. That was terrible.